His whole argument is that you can't become Orthodox if you're American because you're essentially backstabbing your ancestors because we're a Protestant nation. Well, what has it accomplished? He's complaining about the progressive ethos in this country. He's complaining that the church is disintegrating. And he's complaining that all these young men are finding refuge in the Orthodox Church. Hey, brother, wake up. Protestantism has failed. It's a failed experiment. It's a failed project. It's part of this Enlightenment understanding and this elevation of reason. And that's why their criticism of Eastern Orthodoxy, they say, oh, they don't even have like coherent doctrines and theology. It's just all mysticism and experience. No, it's not. What? How ignorant could you be? There's no hierarchical structure. I mean, some of these guys are Baptists. They don't even have bishops. And they mock the idea of bishops. They mock the idea of historical Christianity.
O Lord of hosts, be with us, for we have none other help in times of adversity but Thee. O Lord of hosts, have mercy on us.
Today we're going to have a fun one. We're going to be discussing what I'm sure some of you guys saw is the latest controversies with Right Response Ministries in their recent attack on Eastern Orthodoxy. There's a gentleman I'm just now familiar with. His name's Joel Webbon, and he basically posted a video yesterday that got shared to me. And if you're on X, you've been seeing it kind of make the rounds, in which three Protestant pastors of various swaths, mostly evangelical, are trying to answer the conundrum of why are all these Protestant men converting to Orthodoxy? And what we're about to witness today, because really, I just have a few points on why Protestantism is dying. This is something that we've talked about before, the death of Protestantism. And we've talked about the average age of a Protestant attendee being basically a baby boomer, and that within another generation or so, they're going to lose basically half their parishioners. Meanwhile, as I'll show you in just a second, an old Pew Research Center study, so doing demographic work, specifically in the U.S., often relating to politics and religion, shows that Orthodox attendees, and this is before the massive growth after 2020, there's speculation that Orthodoxy, we don't have hard concrete numbers, but I've seen things being posted. I've talked about this before, that Orthodoxy in America has gone anywhere from 700,000 to potentially close to 7 million since 2020. So we're now beginning that fifth year, but that's just basically in 4 years. Meanwhile, Protestantism is hemorrhaging parishioners, specifically young men. And so what we're going to see is that these guys' response basically boils down to that all these young men are converting to Orthodoxy, not because of doctrine. They'll reiterate this over, not because of theology, not because of church history, not because of the life of the saints, not because of the intricacies of atonement theology or the energy essence distinction, logos logi, has nothing to do with that. It's purely because they have better aesthetics than Protestants, and there's some Orthodox priests. It seems like they're kind of pointing at Father Moses McPherson. Shout out Father Moses McPherson. God bless you. He just passed 100,000 subscribers on YouTube just recently, where they're like, yeah, there's these Orthodox priests online, and they like lift weights and have beards. And that's legitimately their argument for this entire, it's like an hour and a half video, is that Orthodoxy is rising in America, not because people are discovering more about the faith, theology, looking for a true spiritual healing through the sacraments. No, it's because they have better aesthetics and some of their priests lift weights, and therefore it has a sort of a masculine aura, a masculine culture around it. That's literally what they say. What we're going to see is that they totally, you would think that with at least three Protestant pastors, and really there's a fourth, he chimes in through like a Zoom window. You think that they'd probably steelman Eastern Orthodoxy a bit. Rather, what we see is they know very little about Orthodox theology. They know very little about Orthodox atonement theology, the synodal structures of the church. The theosis is never mentioned once. The energy essence distinction is never mentioned once, whether we directly participate in God himself. These are questions that young people are looking for. And Joel's response is that you can't be an American and be Orthodox because then you're just a weird Eastern mystic. And no, I'm very serious. That's what he's going to say today. You're just one of these weird Eastern mystics if you convert to Orthodoxy. And that his argument basically boils down to Orthodoxy is not Western, and therefore no Western man should become Orthodox. Well, that really doesn't suffice, does it? And it kind of has an aura of the Pharisees, right? It's sort of Jewish, like we're the special, we're the chosen group, right? We're not going to identify with the theology that dissolves the distinction between Jew and Gentile. I mean, they have this weird understanding that if you join the Russian Orthodox Church, or I'm Antiochian, that I must be an Arab. What? No, the Antiochian jurisdiction, the Antiochian church, the one that's being persecuted by NATO and Western forces who basically just overthrow Assad by help of Turkey. Actually, that is the first place where people are called Christians. And guess what, Protestants? That is a real historical church. And guess what? That church still exists. And so people are becoming Orthodox, not purely based on aesthetics, although agree with these Protestant pastors that we have much superior aesthetics. And I'll even give them credit because these pastors are not dispensationalists. At least I hadn't watched all their stuff. I just was clicking through their YouTube channel. Seems like they do have videos that are trying to counter dispensationalist understandings of Zionism and how and who Israel is, although for them it's going to probably get tied back into some invisible church theology and not really rooted in anything historical and physical and tactile. We, the Orthodox Church, are Israel. And even the Catholic Church, even post-schism, still upheld that understanding for a long time, although we see the papacy and the Catholic Church move in the general direction of a sort of one world religion. We've looked at Chrislam. We looked at all these different things. And these Protestant pastors claim the reason why they think it's purely aesthetics is because Roman Catholics in America aren't converting to Orthodoxy. It's like, what? What are you talking about, dude? In my own little parish, and we have a small, humble parish, we've had 3 young men convert from Catholicism, one being Eastern Rite Catholicism. So what are you talking about? And we've had multiple Protestants come in, and sure, I will agree that we've probably had more Protestants convert at my parish than Catholic, but we've had at least 3 Catholics convert, and these were more the trad Catholic faith. So this idea, because he claims that, well, Catholicism already has the sacraments and the aesthetics, and so those young men aren't converting to Orthodox. Yes, they are. And what I kind of feel here is that what we're going to watch with this Right Response Ministries is, one, they cannot grasp the cultural tides at hand right now. Now, that could be a generational distinction, although it seems like a couple of the men present are potentially older millennials, or maybe all of them are, besides one kind of seems like a boomer, they may be Gen X. But they really are not grasping while Protestantism is failing. They just blame it on feminism. They just blame it that, oh, well, Protestantism, all these evangelical churches, we have lesbian pastors and guys, are dressed up, walking between ferns and just giving like sort of emotionalized understandings rather than a hardline theological sermon based on the biblical scripture. And certainly that's a degree of it, but why is that such a problem in Protestantism? But it's because of your literal structure. It's because Protestantism is really part of an Enlightenment project. And we're going to hear this in this video. These guys are going to be totally focused on this idea that if you're an Eastern Orthodox, you're like a meditative mystic. They say this multiple times, that somehow we teach like a strange form of Eastern meditation. What? And then they try to equate things like the Jesus prayer, although they don't say that specifically, but they say, well, those Eastern Orthodox, they have prayers and they just say them over and over again, essentially comparing it to a Hindu mantra, which again, we've done videos on. And if they just did a little bit of research, they would realize the difference between an Eastern Orthodox prayer and the resuscitation of it continuously, as opposed to a mantra, that a mantra is really just about the audible sound of it. It's not about the meaning of the words, where we do not say a prayer just based on pure meaning, which is what, or pure sound phonetics. No, we're actually stating a prayer of faith, a really an essential element of our relationship with God, and we're saying the meaning of it, reciting the meaning of it over and over. This is not something to be done unconsciously, like they equate. They think that this is some sort of like Eastern mystical practice, and it's just all ridiculous. And it again, I have 3 words to describe the video we're going to watch today: cope, cringe, and hubris. The cope of the fact that all these young Protestants are becoming Orthodox, it has to do with the meaning crisis. It has to do with the deeper failure of Protestantism and why no Protestant nation is still Protestant. Like, tell me, is Sweden the model? Is England the model? Canada's the model? America's the model? I mean, these guys go so far as they literally say Orthodoxy's gay. And then one of them bring up, because of a comment, somebody sent in a super chat during this stream we're going to watch, not mine, but the Right Response Ministries. And they talk about how Greece just legalized gay marriage. Well, one, the Greek people did not accept that. That was done because Greece is basically run by Western globalists who have taken that country over. And one of the reasons why they're allowing all the Turks and the Muslims to flood Greece right now and attacking the Orthodox Church, of which Mount Athos and many hierarchs of the Greek Church in Greece have denounced the legalization of homosexual marriage, and they've said they will not recognize them in the church. But these Protestants in America, even agreeing that their church is incredibly influenced by feminism and LGBTQ pride, stuff like that, will then call the Orthodox Church gay, not realizing that what is the biggest export of America, right? His whole argument is that you can't become Orthodox if you're American because you're essentially backstabbing your ancestors because we're a Protestant nation. Well, what has it accomplished? He's complaining about the progressive ethos in this country. He's complaining that the church is disintegrating, and he's complaining that all these young men are finding refuge in the Orthodox Church. Hey, brother, wake up. Protestantism has failed. It's a failed experiment. It's a failed project. It's part of this Enlightenment understanding and this elevation of reason. And that's why their criticism of Eastern Orthodoxy, they say, oh, they don't even have like coherent doctrines and theology. It's just all mysticism and experience. No, it's not. What? How ignorant could you be? Have you not read the Church Fathers? Have you not read the Cappadocians? Have you not read St. Maximus the Confessor? Have you not read St. John of Damascus or St. Gregory Palamas? What are you talking about? What are you talking about? It's just absolutely full of nonsense. We're going to watch all this today. And I have a few points just that they don't mention. You think if they're going to be talking about the rise of Orthodoxy in America, which multiple articles have been highlighting. Let me just show you a couple here. So like here's one on the Telegraph in the UK. Young single men are leaving traditional churches. They found a more masculine alternative. And here's another article from the New York Post: young men leaving traditional churches for masculine Orthodox Christianity in droves. And these are just from the last month. This is December 3rd, 2024. And it's just highlighting that Orthodox churches, and the Telegraph one, I don't have a Telegraph membership, don't plan on getting one. But this is talking about how new parishes are planned across the U.S. to accommodate a tsunami of male worshipers who have converted since pandemic. And we've talked about this over and over. How many priests have I had on this stream? Every single one is saying that they're seeing unprecedented numbers of catechumens. Same with my church. Again, I haven't talked with one Orthodox priest on this YouTube channel who hasn't said that is occurring in their parish. So we know for a fact that a lot of people are converting to Orthodoxy. And according to an OCA study I saw, they claim that it's like 75% of all the new converts to Orthodoxy are young men between the ages of 16 and 40. So again, this is a lifeblood into our church. Because let me show you something. If you go to the Pew Research Center, and you look up the age distribution of religious worship. Now, this does not even include, this graph here does not even include the massive influx of young people into the Orthodox Church since the pandemic. I believe this was done in like 2019 or 18. And what do you look at? The smallest, the first number here is the youngest age group. So 18 to 29. And the next one's 30 to 49. Now, if you have a thriving Orthodox or a thriving church, you would want that number to be high, and you'd want the next number to be high. Not that you don't want a lot of old people in the church, but you certainly don't want that to be the majority. So let's just compare, because I've talked about this before, and this isn't even the one that I was looking at previously. I've mentioned in other streams about the average age distribution. This is just a breakdown on attendees' average age. And so you look at the non-Christian traditions. So Buddhism, 34%, 18 to 29. Hinduism, 34%, 18 to 29. Islam, 44%, 18 to 29. Non-religious, 36%. Now, out of the Christian denominations, which one has the highest number of young people present? Well, the Catholic Church is 17%. Evangelicals are 17%. Black churches are 20%. Jehovah's Witnesses, they're not even Christian, 15%. Jewish is 22%. Mainline Protestantism, 16%. Mormonism, 22%. And Orthodoxy is 26%. So even out of the Christian parishes in America, the if we're going to call them that, Christian denominations, I hate that to categorize Orthodoxy as that. Orthodoxy was still the highest and having a percentage of young people even before the massive influx we're seeing. I would imagine that at this point, Orthodoxy would be competing with, it would be in the 35 percentile. So I would say it would be competing with Buddhism and Hinduism and verging on the same level of Islam. And so you look at Protestantism, again, Protestantism is dying, and it's dying for a multitude of reasons. It's dying, one, literally because the vast majority of the people in it are older and they're literally dying out. They're dying out, though, because of its feminization, its emotionalism, right? How many have gone to these rock band churches, or even some of these trad Protestant churches? And I'm not talking about like high Protestant, high Lutheran, or high Anglican churches that still have liturgies. Even though, again, we could get into the theological elements of why you shouldn't belong to even a high Protestant church, but let's ignore the high liturgical Protestant churches and just focus on the mainline and the evangelicals. I mean, even when you go to a trad conservative one, it's what? Rock bands, electric drum sets, barren walls. What is the appeal? As I highlighted here, I got 6 reasons why I believe Protestantism is dying right now in America. The first one's obvious: fragmentation and personal interpretation. I mean, people are looking for truth right now. We're in a meaning crisis because of the postmodern malaise of Western civilization, and that it's essentially self-destructive. We're seeing every Western nation beginning to self-destruct, and partly is that due to a psychological and deliberate operation by the elites, but another is due to the people themselves acquiescing and allow it to happen. And so relativism of biblical interpretation, you know, one of their things that they're going to be hung up on is that those Orthodox Christians believe that the church has the right to authoritatively interpret scripture. Yeah. And why is having an authoritative interpreter of scripture wrong? Because when I look at your church, your Protestant churches, you have thousands of them, thousands of different ones. And they'll say, oh, actually, you know, we're all really much alike. Really? Because I could go just here in my city and go to 2 or 3 different Protestant churches and find doctrinal beliefs very differently on important issues. So, no, you guys aren't unified in any real way. And they want to call into, oh, well, you know, those Orthodox, they have like a Greek church and a Russian church. They're not even unified. And they claim that we have, so there's so many differences between. No, there's not. What theological difference is there between the Orthodox Russian church, the Greek Orthodox Church, or the Antiochian Orthodox Church, or the Romanian Church, or the Serbian Church? Please tell me what are these major theological differences that you want to say that the Orthodox churches and their different jurisdictions are more different than the wide variety of Protestant churches? You have to be kidding me. I can't believe anybody would even say that. I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous. So this one of the reasons why Protestantism is dying, the first one and the most important, is the fragmentation. You guys are so divided. You guys are not united on basically anything except typically your opposition to the papacy, which rightfully so. I'll uphold that one. But these personal interpretations that everybody has their own prerogative and their own ability through the indwelling of the Holy Spirit to read scripture, this is not historical. And this only leads to more fragmentation. And it really sets the precedent for postmodernism. Postmodernism was a literary movement that came out from this understanding that there is no objectively true interpretation of a text. And so when you're reading a book, obviously now we're talking about scripture, but could be any book, the postmodern literary critics would say, you know what? You can kind of read in a sort of critical race or a critical agenda into anything, because the authority of the author's intent is no longer important, because you can never know the interiority of another person's mind. Therefore, the only thing you can know is the interiority of yours. So therefore, your interpretation of a text is true. And that's all we can get to, is how you interpret something. Protestantism literally set the presuppositional foundation for this to become a dominant force within Western civilization. And so, as I said, because of this, there is no universal Protestant truth. You could even say, oh, it's the five solas. Well, some of them don't even agree on that. So, no, there is not a universal Protestant truth, unfortunately. Another one is the modernization and progressivism that has infiltrated the Protestant church. That Protestantism lacks a true Christian foundation and essentially is part of an Enlightenment project. And these Enlightenment projects essentially promote things, again, the Enlightenment philosophy elevates reason, elevates rationality, makes this the sort of sole interpreter of truth. And we're going to be talking about this in our next stream on Scottish common sense realism, because for Thomas Reid, trying to justify the sort of traditional metaphysics, not based on rational means, but based on the sort of common sense apprehension of the world, was an Enlightenment response where how can we deal with metaphysics or the annihilation of metaphysics without an appeal to God? Well, we'll do it through common sense. Well, this post-Enlightenment ideology of Protestantism, it elevates rationality, elevates capitalism, elevates liberalism, elevates humanism. And in so doing, it has constantly been incorporating more and more secular elements to where secular ideologies essentially dominate Protestant churches. And so the authority for Protestantism tends to be the secular cultures that they reside in. They do not do a very good job. And these guys are politically conservative. They're clearly Trump supporting Republicans, and give them credit that they are critical of dispensational theology. But what has Protestantism, quote unquote, conserved in America? It hasn't. It hasn't conserved anything. And so it's constantly modernizing. It's constantly progressing, because progress is an essential element to the Enlightenment tradition. And so it lacks any sort of foundational historical Christian tradition, because even from the beginning, Zwingli and Luther and Calvin, they're already disagreeing and creating rational argumentation for why their interpretation is true versus this interpretation, and why people need to be part of their group. It becomes literally a personality cult where the pastor at a Protestant church is their own papacy. They are their own vicar, and so instead of one pope, which was bad enough, Protestantism has millions of popes. They're called pastors. And so Protestantism bends to the cultural whims of secularism. It has no name and historical point in which Protestantism has really resisted the secular or historical whims of a particular period. It hasn't. It always acquiesces to it. Another one, like I said, is the feminization of Protestant worship, that it's incredibly emotional and it lacks depth. If you go to some of these rock band churches or some of these real popular, and some of them are mega churches here in Indiana, there's some churches, and one of them, they stayed open during the coup, which I highly respect. But It's incredibly emotional, like the pastor's up there in his new Air Force Ones and like a designer t-shirt or sweatshirt or something. And he's basically giving you sort of it's like in the middle ground between Joel Osteen's prosperity gospel and a sort of Tony Robbins motivational speech. And maybe that makes you feel good, but that's not historical. That's not the historical faith. And so it really Protestantism and the evangelical church, I would say, even with those who resist it, is couched within a sort of feminist, shallow theology. It's shallow. It does not address the things that these young men. And one of the things that is going to be true is I don't think Joel and the other pastors in this video understand the depth of the autism online. They keep saying that nobody's converting to orthodoxy due to doctrines and theology. Bro, have you talked to these people? Like, and Dyer always jokes about, the Chad nerds and the autist and the Spurgs. But seriously, if you listen to some of these young men that are converting, I mean, they're 18 years old, 19 years old, and some of them autistic, but my gosh, they know their stuff. They had spent time reading, researching, learning history, learning elements of theology, learning what differentiates one group from another group. What are you talking about, Joel? Have you not talked to these people? He keeps saying about my experience, boots on the ground. Boots on the ground? What boots on the ground do you have? Are you going to these Orthodox churches? Have you talked to these young men? They are incredibly knowledgeable about the faith. Like this is, they are not doing it out of aesthetics and because there's a priest online who lifts weights and he has a beard. What? That is the most shallow attempt to address what's happening that I could even imagine. And then another point that that people have argued about the death of Protestantism, and this was speculated in the mid 20th century. It's called the secularization thesis. And I disagree, and I actually rebut that the secularization thesis is true. However, there's a caveat there in regards to Protestantism. So the secularization thesis, if you're not familiar, is a thesis that was put forth that as societies become more and more secular, that religion and religious devotion would decrease in these various nation states. However, other people, and then really beginning in the 1980s and 90s, we saw scholars begin to push back in regards to the secularization thesis. So somebody like Peter Berger, sociologist Peter Berger, while he was arguing in favor of it in the 1960s and 70s, actually towards the end of the 80s and 90s was saying that it's false, highlighting how many religious revivals are occurring around the world and even amongst various quote unquote secular nations. Now, the caveat I would say is that, yes, secularization theory is not fully true. However, we have not seen this revival so much in the Protestant churches. We did see the revival of the sort of evangelical 1980s, 1990s, pro Ronald Reagan, Billy Graham type stuff, but it's really dissipated since then. And I would argue that you could see that Protestantism is dissipating in secularized cultures because Protestantism really is an ideology. It lacks sacraments. It lacks the mysticism that these guys are going to try to mock today when we watch the video. Because if you are growing up in America and you want authentic spiritual experience, you're going to probably dabble into things like psychedelics or occultism or New Age spirituality. And these things will give you experiences. Can you get those experiences in Protestantism? No, not outside emotionalism. Now, I'm not here to advocate for psychedelics. We speak bad about that. Occultism, New Age, you have, I've hundreds of videos trying to undercut most of that stuff. But mysticism and mystical experience is yearned for right now in Western societies because of the over-rationalization of these post-Enlightenment projects. And so people want something experiential. And this is even why Pentecostalism is growing in some of these evangelical circles. People want experience, but in Orthodoxy, you can have the ordered, rational, historical, authentic faith and have a mystical experience that is about the healing of your soul. The church is a hospital. Christ is the great physician. That's what the sacraments are for. Taking in these uncreated energies of God. That is the beauty of theosis, how we become gods by grace. These guys have no understanding of that. And it's incredible to listen to. So they have no mysticism. And I think because Protestantism lacks mysticism, the secularization theory almost holds true for Protestantism and why there is no Protestant nation that's still majority Christian. You could argue America, but then at the same time, these guys are yelling about all the degeneracy and the debauchery in America. So which way is it? America is a great Protestant nation that's always been Protestant and Protestants thrivingism, but at the same time, we have all these commies and liberals and progressives and LGBTQ and Hollywood's exporting this. Well, which one is it? Is Protestantism doing its job or is it not? It's not, and it's going to die. It is dying. It is literally, Protestantism is currently dying right now, and it's going to die because it's not, again, you are known by the fruits. There's no, I mean, name a Protestant saint. Obviously, they don't believe in saints, but that's part of my point. It's dying. It is not a healthy vine. And so my last point here is that Protestantism is has weak institutional structures, and that's the only way you're able to resist historical forces. Why is it that the Orthodox faith has been able to endure the Ottoman invasion of Constantinople, the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia, the Soviet Union in Romania and Serbia, in Moldova, in Ukraine? Why is it that the Orthodox Church has always been able to resist some of the most horrific historical events, and yet Protestantism can't even deal with LGBTQ stuff? I mean, it's totally withering away and accepting it. Protestantism is dying. It has a weak institutional structure and therefore cannot respond in the same way. There's no hierarchical structure. I mean, some of these guys are Baptists. They don't even have bishops. And they mock the idea of bishops. They mock the idea of historical Christianity. And so it's not resistant, and it will capitulate with any historical wind that Protestantism faces. And that's always been the case. That's always been the case. And when you look at, things like the Methodist Church, this is the greatest schism in American history has happened because 7,000 congregations have left the United Methodist Church because they now condone LGBTQ inclusion and LGBTQ ministries. So they're okay with their lesbian pastors and marrying gays in the church. And I grew up Methodist. I grew up, and it was in that church was, when I was a kid, a conservative Methodist church. By the time I was an adult, they had a female pastor who brought her golden retriever up to the altar, would do her sermons and homilies, and it was basically a feel good, do the right thing, feel good, progressive value sort of sermon that she would give. It's nonsense. It's nonsense, and it's going to die. Even the 7,000 congregations that broke away. I mean, how much time do they have? Are they really going to convert young people en masse? And they need men, because men who convert, they're the ones that are eventually going to get wives and they're going to have families. That's how a church thrives. Protestantism is dying. It's dying, and it's not going to survive, and it's not coming back. And these guys need to realize what the problems are with their own faith. They won't recognize that the fact that your theology is so much of an ideology is why you're competing with all these things based on a sort of rational ideological level, communism and capitalism and the progressives. These are the biggest threats to Protestantism. No, it has to do with spiritual warfare. It has to do with actual sacraments. And so people who actually delve into magic, you can't get into the realities of the occult, come out of that and Protestantism is good enough. Where's the exorcism? It doesn't have a sacramental reality. Materiality, the creation itself, is not incorporated into the church enough to actually respond to the spiritual elements we're all up against. Only a sacramental church can do that. And so I will say, lastly, in regards to the rise of orthodoxy, they totally get it wrong. They claim that the rise of orthodoxy is because of aesthetics and because masculine men online who lift weights and are promoting it and have beards. Guilty as charged, but that's not the reason why people are becoming orthodox. They totally ignore the spiritual depth and historical continuity. People are looking for that. They say people aren't coming to the Orthodox Church based on rational theology and doctrinal difference. Yes, they are. Talk to them. The vast majority of people I talk to, I ask them why. Oh, what brought you to an Orthodox church? It's my first liturgy. What brought you here? Well, I started to look into church history. I was at my Protestant church, and somebody was talking about, you know, LGBTQ stuff, or do we directly participate in God? And that sent me down a rabbit hole. And then I started looking and doing deeper. And then I read this book. You read this book? Oh yeah, Orthodoxy and the Religion of the Future. Yeah, I read that book. Father Seraphim. Yeah, and then I started thinking this and that. No, this is a journey. In the fact, and I don't know if this is aware to Joel and some of these Protestant pastors. Even if these kids come to the Orthodox Church, they have to be a catechumen for another year. They don't even get to participate in liturgy. This idea that they can just come to the Orthodox Church and they get to belong and become, they're certainly welcome, absolutely. But notice the Orthodox Church is not going out and trying to evangelize everybody and convert them. We are doing our thing, and those who are led by the Spirit of in pursuit of truth come to us, and we open the doors and we open our arms gladly for them. But they are then in a process of becoming an Orthodox Christian and a member of the church and a communing member with Christ. That does not happen by a proclamation of faith. These people clearly have no understanding of how the Orthodox Church works. They are coming for authenticity. And that's, again, the spiritual depth and historical continuity is the authenticity that young men are looking for. And they can find it in the church. And that's why so many Catholics are coming to the Orthodox Church, because once they realize the errors of the papacy and they see what Pope Frank is doing right now, Pope Frankie and his subversion of their faith, they're coming in droves, Catholics and Protestants. Another point is liturgical beauty. We'll agree with them that we certainly have superior aesthetics compared to the Protestant churches. No doubt about that. Case closed. But the liturgical beauty and the sacramental life is a huge element. If you read Scripture, if you read the Gospels and you read the epistles, there is a literal understanding of the sacraments. There is a literal historical church there. And there is a liturgical practice. You read the book of Revelation, St. John is literally describing a heavenly liturgy. Are those present in your Protestant church? No, they're not. And so the real presence of Christ, the real presence of a divine mystery, that's, yes, we can articulate it to some degree rationally, but within the limits of language, but it's supra-rational. It's beyond reason. It's beyond language. It's apophatic. And so the beauty and then the goal of theosis is something to strive for. Young men need a challenge. They're becoming Orthodox because we actually give them a challenge. We force them, and this is one of my other points, to worship God physically and spiritually. Orthodoxy is physically and spiritually demanding. You have to fast. You have to do prayers. We prostrate, and you have to go to confession with your priest. This is the historical faith. Young men want a challenge. They don't want something that's easy and accommodates to every progressive whim that occurs in our culture. And one, orthodoxy is community focused. This meaning crisis that, you know, Vervaeke and Peterson and all these people are talking about, it has to do also with this overemphasis on individualism, which is the epitome of what Protestantism is. It's an individual faith. You make your individual confession. You have your own individual beliefs. Orthodoxy is not that. We are individuals made in the image of Christ, no doubt about that. We would structure that as our personhood, but we have so much more of a focus on the community, the communal, the communion, because we actually are having communion with Christ with the Eucharist. And so it's community focused, and young men thrive there because they can come to a place, and then after liturgy, when they go to fellowship, they find all their young men and women that are all on the same page. We get what's happening in culture. We understand the spiritual war. We understand the movement of time right now and globalism and how it's moving towards a centralized technocracy of the Antichrist. We can see all this stuff, but now you're in a communal group of like-minded people that you engage with face to face. You don't sip your latte as the rock band begins to sing, you know, the Hillsong. It's ridiculous. And then also orthodoxy is clearly a resistance to modernism. As we've talked about, Protestantism cannot resist modernism. It can't. It never has. It never will. It's literally part of a progressive ethos of belief and doctrines. And so EO has faced the most extreme hardships that you can imagine with the Ottomans, with the Bolsheviks, with various wars that have taken place, with the Mongols. And they're still here with the same tradition, the same liturgies, the same theology. And so the fact that Orthodoxy is historically proven to thrive against the greatest difficulty. I mean, the Bolshevik Revolution, the Soviet Union, is literally the greatest attack on Christians in world history. We're talking about 30 plus million Orthodox Christians killed. And look at Russia now. It's literally building churches left, right, and center all over the country. And more people are becoming Orthodox and regaining their historical identity and faith. This was discussed and prophesied by the saints. We're seeing it happening. And so my last point in regards to the rise of Orthodoxy that these guys don't address is the depth of apologetics and theology. They keep claiming that Orthodoxy is like some sort of irrational belief system that's just purely mystical and trying to get people to have experiences. What are you talking about? Read the church fathers. And when you look at Orthodoxy, so what? We're not even, maybe at this point, we're 1% of America. We're 1% of the population. And yet we totally dwarf our numbers when it comes to online apologetics. We totally surpass the numbers of our actual demographic makeup in the United States. And in this idea that they think that this is purely an American thing is absolutely ridiculous. I have a thing right here. I just showed my wife. My wife's from Germany, Stuttgart. And right here, number of Orthodox Christians in Germany is on the rise, while Catholic and Protestant churches are reporting membership losses in Germany every year. Christian Orthodoxy is growing. And she converted in 2020 or 2021 in Germany, and she was showing me all her Telegram groups that are like Orthodox women, just Orthodox Germans, and that it is literally on an exponential growth. This is not a unique American phenomenon. This is a Western phenomenon due to the ills and the failures of Western Christianity. Catholicism, and this is something that they don't mention. They want to talk about how Catholicism is still so traditional. Do they even know what Vatican II is? Do they even know what Chrislam is? Do they understand what Pope Francis is putting forth? He talks about, well, the Catholic Church still has traditional masses, so they don't have to go to an Orthodox liturgy. Do you understand that Pope Francis has actually condemned the traditional Latin Mass? Like, are you guys living in an absolute bubble over there in evangelical Protestant world? They do not have their thumb on the culture whatsoever. And I think this is why Orthodoxy is so effective when it comes to people like Father Josiah Trenum, Father Peter Heers, Father Moses McPherson, Father Turbo Qualls, and the list goes on. They have a pulse. They have their thumb on the cultural movement within this country and what the young people are doing, what the young people are experiencing. When I hear these Protestants talk, it's like they have no clue what's actually happening in America right now. And they have no clue why people are being drawn to the Orthodox Church. It's unbelievable. And so you would think that they would at least attempt to steelman Orthodoxy, which they do not. They do not at all. And because Orthodoxy, I say the reason why the apologetics are so powerful is when you look at the Orthodox channels that do apologetics, they steelman the opponent. When we're doing apologetics against Islam, we're pulling the verses out of the Quran. We're pulling the passages out of the Book of Mormon. We're highlighting, what this person said here. Our apologetics has so much depth to it, and we do our best. Sure, we mock people, and we're failures in our own representation of Orthodoxy, but generally speaking, at a general level of online Orthodoxy, the depth of the apologetic response to these traditions is so much more overwhelming. It's so much better. The quality is so much higher than what these Protestants are about to do concerning Orthodoxy. So that's what I want to say before we get started here. So smash that like, guys. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to send those in. I greatly appreciate it. Looks like one came in from Spartan up north, throws in $10 Canadian, says, sorry, Prots, people want the body and blood of Christ, not a grape and a piece of toast. Yeah. So true. So true. Thank you very much, Spartan Up North. And let me just check over here in case anybody sent anything in. Nothing on Dono chat. And then let me just see on Streamlabs real quick. By the way, guys, smash that like. I just want to do some quick housekeeping and say that if you want to support my work, one of the best things you could do is become a website member. I would greatly appreciate that. We have a sponsored stream that I've been trying to do for a week now. It's on Scottish Common Sense Realism. Shout out to AC. I was going to do it last Thursday, and a member of my parish, God rest her soul, Juliana, totally unexpectedly, passed away. It was a big traumatic event for our parish. And so I didn't end up doing our stream Thursday night, which I planned on. And then didn't feel too great, just kind of low energy, maybe somewhat getting sick or fighting off something on Sunday. So I didn't feel like doing it then. Last night I was going to do the sponsored stream, and then Jay and Andrew were live. So my goal is to do the sponsored stream tomorrow or Thursday. But I have tons of show notes for that. And if you'd like to get access to an exclusive video library with all my show notes, please become a website member. It's $5 a month, 2 months free if you purchase for a year. And if you'd like to get into our private think tank meeting in which we discuss any and all topics in a private meeting with men. I mean, right now we don't have any women, but with men all over the world. If you're a woman, you could join, but it is mostly men. And we get deep into various topics going on. Sign up as a premium member, would greatly appreciate that. Also, if anybody's interested in a one-on-one session, got one lined up for this Wednesday. We have an opening. If somebody else wants to sign up, we can discuss any topic your heart desires. And as I said, we have a sponsored stream coming up on Scottish Common Sense Realism. It's going to be a lot of fun. If you would like to sponsor a stream, you have a good topic you would like me to dive. If you have a good topic you'd like me to dive into, please sign up. I'd greatly appreciate that. I'll reach out to you. You let me know kind of what you're thinking, and then we can go from there. And also, if you're in the market for any Orthodox items, be it icons, prayer ropes, incense lamps, whatever it may be, please check out orthodoxdepot.com. Orthodoxdepot.com. Use promo code COTEL. You'll get 10% off. You'll be able to help me out, as well as a good Orthodox company here, an American Orthodox company here in the Midwest. So please check that out. Okay, now let's get into it. Let's see, what all do I have? So we were already showing a little bit of this. I posted this today, and this is kind of the theme of what we're going to see. And this is why Protestantism is failing so bad, is they are flailing. These pastors who have followings online, they are flailing to have some type of response to the Orthodox Church right now, because so many people are leaving. And this is literally what one man says. There have been some calls for me to debate the Eastern Orthodox. Now, meanwhile, these people are constantly speaking bad about Orthodoxy and mischaracterizing it and mischaracterizing the people that are converting. There are several problems with this. Okay, let's hear his problems, a Protestant, why he won't debate Orthodoxy. One, they have neither a confession nor even a catechism. So there is nothing to which I could actually respond with regard to their beliefs. What? This is an Orthodox or a Protestant pastor is claiming we don't even have a catechesis. We don't even have a catechism. We don't even have a set structure of beliefs. What are you talking about? Just total nonsense. His second reason. The so-called energy essence distinction, or what he calls the essence energies distinction, is philosophical, to abuse the word, gobbledygook. Debating it would accomplish absolutely nothing except in front of a technical audience. So it's gobbledygook unless you actually have philosophical credentials. Then you can actually talk about whether we engage directly with God and how exactly that works. Or is it just an analogy like Thomistic theology? What are you talking? So you can't do a debate because you're afraid that the audience won't have the technical know-how. So what? If it's true, it's true. And his third reason, the EO, the Eastern Orthodox, are not unified in any meaningful way. What? A debate with a Russian Orthodox would mean nothing to a Ukrainian Orthodox, would mean nothing to Does he know that the Ukrainian Orthodox Church is part of the Russian church? Does he understand that the real one, not the fake one that was made up post Zelensky, but the real Ukrainian, does he understand that they're under the Moscow Patriarchate? Does he understand that they have the exact same theology? Like, this is the level of Protestant rebuttal, and they're wondering why all the young men are leaving. This is absolutely retarded.